we're all adults. We pay bills and bring up children, all of a sudden. And yet you go into most businesses and they treat adults like they're children. It's like, we will tell you what to do. That's quite difficult, isn't it? And you've just got this massive wasted resource.
Ooh.
And also people will lean into that as well. If you start to, if you treat someone, Tony, my business partner, back once upon a time when we were in bands, he worked out that if he told me that I was the best guitarist he's ever seen, and if he kept telling me that, I got better. Like I just got better, right? He worked that out really early on, and the bastard didn't tell me that for years as well. I thought it was fantastic. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. But I was actually better at it from that, and receiving that. But that is, essentially an example of a manager looking at one of his teams, the lead guitar part of this functioning little unit, and saying like, that's what that guy needs. That his purpose is to be the best of the best, even if it's only in his head, but that actually makes him better and more passionate about what he's doing. I think, like you say, to just do that from the top down in a big business would be impossible. Like you need to do it from the bottom up and say like, when do you feel best? Oh, I really like it when you say I'm good. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we can do more of that. That's no problem at all. And implement it. So many businesses have changed recently, right? There's a ton of working from home all of a sudden that's been implemented. And I know like a lot of businesses are now have mental health is a conversation they're throwing around. My worry that I've seen, and I just want to know your thoughts on it, is so many businesses have just implemented working from home now. Right? We closed our office 15, 16 months ago. And now it's working from home. How do you keep that kind of communication, that interaction, and make sure you're not being, top level down when everything's remote? And if business is all going to move to this point where it's remote in the future, how do you keep that culture going and not have just siloed people who, are saying, yeah, sure, in an hour's phone call and then moving on?
Yeah. So a few thoughts on this. So first of all, purpose makes it easier because purpose, it creates a common bond. And if you're clear, this is what our business is here to do. Then you have a connection with the other people in your business, whether you're physically seeing them or not. And that then also drives.
You're all singing from the same hymn sheet. You're all on the same journey together.
Yes, yeah, and you're all contributing toward that same goal. The other thing then is communication.
Right.
And communication is really important. And I had this conversation actually with a group of about 25 business leaders yesterday, purely about the move to hybrid working and impact on culture and talent. And there's a guy called Matt Mullenweg, I think, who's the CEO of Automatic. He was one of the initial programmers of WordPress. And he's got this really interesting, so his business has got about 900 people. Wow. And they're all over the world, like 90 different countries, completely, he calls it a distributed workforce. And it's really interesting because he's got this model. So they've been doing that for years. And so he was on a podcast at the beginning of the pandemic with Sam Harris. And he's got this model, and he basically said, right, most businesses are just, in the old world, most businesses, everybody works in the office 98% of the time. He said level 2 of the model that we went through is you try and recreate how the office works in the virtual space. Right. So you have a team meeting, but as opposed to people being there in person, you've got 25 faces on Zoom and Sure. And he likened it, and he said, when TV first came out, they tried to make TV shows in exactly the same way as they made radio shows.
Makes sense.
Because that's just how you made drama. But then they realized the medium is completely different. And, if you put the Archers on telly, can you imagine putting the Archers on telly? Not that you listen to the Archers, or maybe not many people listen.
I absolutely have. In fact, I was talking to my mum last night. I haven't talked to her in a week or two because she went fishing. And I was talking to her. We were halfway through a big conversation. She went, "Oh, gotta go. That's the Archers." and boom, she was gone. But yeah, you're right. If you put Archers on TV, that's not going to translate.
Yeah. And that's the thing about remote working. You can't recreate how the office works physically when everybody's together in the digital space. You've got to start to recreate it because it's a different medium using different tools. So I'd suggest to everybody, it's really interesting. If you search Matt Mullenweg model for distributed working, it's a really interesting kind of model. But yeah, so in my view, those organizations that are purpose driven have got an extra benefit over those that are not, because that is something that helps to keep people bonded together, and it helps people to think that their work is meaningful. And then it's about communication, and then it's about actually letting people get on with their jobs and treating them like adults. And it's really interesting in the Matt Mullenweg model. Level 5 is nirvana, right? But level 4 is what he calls it's an asynchronous workforce. Because they've got people all around the world. So he's like, so somebody will start the task, and do the first 8 hours, and then it goes to the next time zone, and they'll work on it for the next 8 hours. And he's like, so it's not about all us being in a meeting at the same time. It's about us having a really clear idea of what it's at. It's letting our people do work when they want to work, and we're only focused on outcomes as opposed to what hours they work. Even though these people are not in the same room together, they're able to work so much more meaningfully. And if you get things right. What was also interesting though is, even though they're completely distributed, they talk about the importance of getting people physically together. Right. So although they don't have offices, once a quarter they get people in the same geographies together, and once a year they get the whole business together. And that's purely about connection and culture and people being together, because you've got to top that up, even if you are working remotely. And I've definitely felt it. You have to have some physical connection and contact with people.
I missed it.
Yeah,
I really missed it. And if I think back to sales career, right? I spent my whole life on a phone calling people. I would definitely go and meet them once.
Yeah.
And after that one meeting, I know you now, Chris. I've seen you. I've met you. We've high-fived. We shook hands. We looked in the eyes. I know that you're, something I never see in a Zoom call, but when you're stressed, you do this, or I've seen or whatever. But things that we've all missed on that, or you tap your feet when you're bored, or something. But I get to see that in person, and but most importantly, the connection, the human connection and relation it builds. Just meeting someone once, once I've met someone once, I can just pick up the phone and be like, "Sup, Chris?" And that I'm silly, right? That you've met me. You've seen emails which are dead professional, but that's not necessarily the way I talk.
Yes, yeah, and even because we've talked like this a lot. We've had conversations through Zoom and different mediums, but it is different when you meet in person. I mean, you'll see that I'm 4'11" when we meet.
Exactly. I never knew. You guys got a Zoom on the whole time.
Yeah.
It's actually everything in your house is really small.
Yeah. It looks like there's high ceilings, but actually no. It's no, I'm joking.
Living on the ninth and a half floor. And that is the thing. Just little bits and pieces like that. And I did a post this week about are you looking forward to getting home or going back to the office? And it was so interesting how many people were like, never going to the office again.
Yeah.
I think that's really weird. I just think it's really weird. I think the concept of saying I'm going to work from home and I'm going to go to a cafe when I need human interaction and stuff. And I'm, and people said a lot of times, I've got great people around me. I've got great family and great friends around me. I can't think of anything worse than moaning about work. We all moan about work, right? To my wife, because it's frustrating to be like, cool. So there's this person called Billy. Give me 45 minutes and I'm going to explain who Billy is, what they do, why they do it. And then at the end of that 45 minutes, I'm going to tell you what they said that annoyed me, right? Or the situation we're in. I need work people around me, not only so as a boss, I can make sure everyone's okay, but also vice versa. We have a very collaborative environment. Like I was asked on a podcast yesterday, what do you do? My answer is always, for a couple of years now has been whatever they tell me. Right, I'm the managing director, but my job is to facilitate everyone else. That is my whole job, is to help them spin those plates. If they need a second to go and spin a different plate, then I should jump in and get that going as well. And I think it's hopefully that's starting to change more and more with that communication, with even if we are all separated. I love the concept of a distributed workforce, because I think a lot of businesses are about to move to that.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually think the biggest challenge is going to be the hybrid. I actually think it's probably easier to be completely in person or completely distributed. But actually, I think the vast majority of businesses are moving towards that kind of middle way. And I think people need to think really carefully about culture and connection and creativity. I think that some people, I think some people are all different. And so some people really will work much better just being at home the majority of the time, whereas others will need to be in the office the majority of the time, and some will kind of balance with a mix. But it's kind of, how do you weave all of that together is the challenge. And I think part of that, if you are trying to micromanage everybody in your business, going back to treating adults who got brains and responsibilities, treating them like children and trying to figure everything out, that's just not going to work. Whereas actually treat people like adults and kind of say, okay, let us all figure this out together. You'll find that teams find ways of working, and teammates like, okay, you're going to be at home 90% of the time, I'm going to be in the office 90% of the time. This is how it will work. That's, I've worked in big businesses, and then I've been I've run medium-sized businesses, or I've run business units for big businesses, and the big mistake that everybody falls into is trying to solve all the challenges and the problems for that business. It is impossible, and the bigger the business gets, the more
too many problems
it becomes. Yeah. But also you become, people get deluded because by the time you're a senior in a bigger business, you've been so successful, you just think you have the magic answer. I've got that.
God, I'm definitely guilty of that. Yeah,
we all do it. I mean, I'm definitely. I mean, there'll be. I'm sure there will be people who worked for me in the past. If they were watching this, they'll be throwing stuff at the screen like, "You were that person, Chris."
Blackwell.